Welcome to Talking Ketamine, another special deep dive from the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So if you're exploring ketamine therapy, maybe intravenous or ketamine-assisted therapy for depression, or perhaps you're already undergoing treatment.
Yeah, you're likely wanting to understand, well, everything about it, right?
Exactly. Ketamine therapy is definitely getting a lot of attention.
Hmm.
It's a really interesting option for people looking for new ways to manage mental health.
It absolutely is. And that's why we thought it was important, really crucial actually, to talk about something maybe less discussed.
Which is?
The potential warning signs.
Yeah.
Signs that might suggest ketamine use is becoming, well, problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
So we dug into some recent research to, lay out the information you should probably be aware of as you navigate this whole area.
Mm-hmm. And the main source we're looking at today is a study from 2025. It's titled The Landscape of Ketamine Use Disorder: Patient Experiences and Perspectives on Current Treatment Options. And what makes the study particularly useful, I think, is that it directly talks to people who actually identify as having ketamine use disorder, or KUD. It captures their experiences.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. This wasn't just like a couple of anecdotes, was it?
Oh, no, not at all. It involved 274 participants, and they were from all over the UK, the US, Canada, other parts of Europe, Australia.
Wow, quite a spread.
Yeah, and importantly, the researchers included people who were actively seeking treatment for their ketamine use, but also people who weren't.
Ah, okay. So you get both perspectives.
Exactly. It gives a much broader picture, a more comprehensive view of what's going on.
Okay, that makes sense. So diving into the findings, what were some of the key physical sort of red flags that came out of this study, things someone may be receiving or thinking about ketamine therapy should really pay attention to?
Well, one of the most striking things was just how common certain physical issues were. A really significant number, 60%, reported having bladder problems.
60%? Wow.
Yeah. And another 60% reported nasal problems. And then there are the K-cramps, those really specific abdominal pains linked to ketamine use.
Mm.
Those were reported by 56% of the people in the study.
Those numbers are honestly quite high. It does make you think about, the potential long-term stuff.
Right.
And it wasn't just limited to those issues, right? There are others?
No, definitely not. There were other symptoms, less common maybe, but still really important to be aware of. Headaches were mentioned by 17%.
Okay.
And then another 12% talked about a whole range of other problems, things like kidney issues, gallbladder, pancreas, liver problems. Even things like heart palpitations, erectile dysfunction, blood in the urine, constipation, and that kind of general brain fog feeling.
That's quite a list of potential physical effects.
Yeah.
And here's something I found really concerning. Most people who had these symptoms didn't actually go get help for them.
That's a really critical point, yeah. A concerning 56%, so more than half, of those who had these physical symptoms, they didn't seek any treatment for them.
Why do you think that is?
It's hard to say definitively from the study alone, but it could be lack of awareness, maybe embarrassment, or perhaps not connecting the symptoms directly to the ketamine use initially.
And for the ones who did seek help?
Well, the satisfaction wasn't great. Only 36% felt satisfied with the treatment they got.
Only 36%.
Yeah. Many said there just weren't effective options, or maybe they only got pain relief, without tackling the root cause. It really raises questions about awareness and the support systems available.
It definitely does. Okay, so that covers the physical side during use. What about when people tried to, say, cut back or stop using ketamine altogether? Did the study find any patterns of withdrawal-type symptoms people should know about?
Yes, absolutely. The study did identify a clear set of abstinence or withdrawal symptoms. The most common were intense cravings. 71% reported that.
71%? That's huge.
It is. And right behind that were low mood at 62% and anxiety at 59%. Irritability was also pretty common, 45%.
Okay, so those sound like really significant emotional hurdles someone might face if they're trying to reduce their use. Were there physical withdrawal symptoms too?
There were, yes. Sleep disturbances and fatigue were quite common, 36% and 34% respectively. Abdominal pain came up again, also at 34%, and insomnia at 32%. And then, less frequently, people reported things like poor appetite, sweating, shaking, palpitations, and in a smaller group, dysphoria, tremors, and even delusions in about 9% of cases.
Wow. Delusions too.
Yeah. It really highlights that stopping or even just cutting back isn't always straightforward, There can be real challenges.
Right. So it's not just about the effects while using, but also what happens when you try to step away. The study also looked into how people were using ketamine, didn't they? Like how much and why. specifically those with self-identified KED.
Exactly. So the average amount reported across everyone who identified as having KED was about 2 grams per day.
2 grams, okay.
But interestingly, there was a difference. Those who were actively seeking treatment reported using more, on average, about 2.67 grams a day,
Compared to?
compared to the non-treatment seeking group, who averaged about 1.68 grams per day.
Okay, interesting difference. And how are they mainly using it?
The overwhelming majority, 93%, reported snorting it. That was their main way of taking it.
Right. And what about the reasons why people started using ketamine in the first place, according to this group?
The main initial reasons mentioned were seeking and dissociation, 73% said that. Then self-medication came up for 53%, and also the psychedelic effects, which 56% cited as an initial draw.
But those initial reasons often change, right, as use goes on.
They often do, yeah. And the study reflected that. When they asked about reasons for continued use, dissociation was still high at 57%. Self-medication also remained significant at 50%.
And did anything else emerge?
Yes, relaxation became a major factor for continued use, cited by 40% of participants. So you can see a bit of a shift sometimes in what keeps people using.
Mm-hmm. That really shows how something that starts for one reason can kind of evolve into something else. Now, one of the aspects that seemed, well, quite concerning that the study touched on was the general awareness around the risks, wasn't it?
Yes, that was a really big theme. A large majority, 59%, felt there was definitely not enough awareness either in education or just among peers about the potential dangers of ketamine.
And what specific gaps did they point out? Like, what weren't people aware of?
Well, a few key things came up. Many just felt there was a lack of basic information about ketamine overall. More specifically, people felt there wasn't enough understanding of the physical harms, especially to the bladder and kidneys.
Right. Those high prevalence issues we mentioned.
Exactly. And maybe most worryingly, the fact that ketamine can be addictive seemed to be really underestimated by a lot of people.
It's almost like, and this is just me thinking, with all the positive talk about therapeutic uses, maybe the potential downsides are getting a bit lost.
That's a concern that was actually voiced by participants in the study. Some felt that the growing focus on ketamine therapy might be overshadowing or even downplaying the risks of misuse and addiction. In fact, one participant made a really stark comparison, describing ketamine as potentially the heroin of a generation in terms of how underestimated the risks are.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. Really makes you pause.
It does. It reflects a deep concern from someone experiencing problematic use about how it's being perceived more broadly.
And did the study also mention a specific viewpoint about the increasing availability of ketamine therapy itself?
Yes, it did. It's important to frame this correctly. This was one participant's perspective reported in the study, not like a conclusion from the researchers themselves.
Got it. Understood.
But yes, this individual voiced concern that as ketamine therapy becomes more available, it might inadvertently lead to less awareness of the addiction risks. And they even suggested it could potentially act as a gateway to other problematic substance use for some.
Okay, so a perspective raised within the study group itself.
Precisely. Worth noting, but important to see it as one reported viewpoint.
Absolutely. Okay, so bringing this all together for someone listening. Maybe they're currently in ketamine therapy for depression, or they're seriously considering it. Based on this research, what are the really crucial warning signs they should be mindful of?
I think the study really points to a few key areas. First, pay close attention to any physical symptoms, especially those bladder and nasal issues and those K-cramps. These were really common among people who identified as having KU.
Okay, physical signs first. What else?
Second, be aware of how you feel if you reduce your dose or stop using ketamine, maybe between sessions, or if you discontinue treatment. Notice any withdrawal symptoms like those intense cravings, low mood, or anxiety that the study highlighted as being quite common.
Right, cravings, mood, anxiety. Got it.
And underlying all of this seems to be the issue of awareness.
Yeah, that came through strongly. The need for better information and communication.
Absolutely. The fact that so many participants felt awareness was lacking really underscores how important it is for you, the listener, to actively seek out reliable information and crucially have really open, honest conversations with your doctors or therapists about any concerns, physical, emotional, whatever they might be.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it feels like the message is, yes, ketamine therapy shows real promise for many people struggling with depression.
Definitely.
But this research is a vital reminder that understanding the potential for problematic use and knowing these warning signs we've discussed is just essential. It's about engaging responsibly and looking after your overall well-being.
Well said. We really encourage you to keep doing your own research, ask questions, and have those informed discussions with your healthcare team. And maybe just a final thought to leave you with. As our understanding and use of ketamine and therapy keep evolving, it seems critical that our awareness of the potential risks keeps pace, right? So maybe the question to ask yourself and your providers is, how can we ensure we're navigating this powerful treatment both effectively and safely?